In the distant future, vampires rule the night, but their numbers are dwindling. One podcast is unlike all the others. Half human, half vampire. This is Lefty Speaks, the official podcast for Vampire Hunter D.
Welcome back to Lefty Speaks for episode 4 for the Vampire Hunter D podcast. Thank you for joining us.
We are where we are today because one of the big reasons is because of Vampire Hunter D. Yeah.
And we can't underestimate the value of what we used to call the gray market of conventions, where bootlegs, high quality bootlegs and fan subs really kept, and I'm not a fan of piracy at all. I mean, I'm stating that publicly, and I will die on that hill.
Yes.
But unfortunately, for a very long time, the only way you could get Vampire Hunter D was originally the really low quality, almost black and white fan subs. And then eventually somebody discovered Laserdiscs and the beautiful, because I remember watching Vampire Hunter D, the first film, on Laserdisc later. And I was amazed at why and how the Laserdisc world never really took hold here, despite the absolute incredible quality it had for so many years. I mean, buying a Laserdisc was like buying a LP, a vinyl, and you could open it up and you would get these incredible artwork that may have been a theater card, when you walk in, like there was all this stuff that I would see, because I had a couple of friends in college who worked for, what was it called? It wasn't Sight and Sound magazine. There used to be like a Laserdisc. I mean, it was Sight and Sound. I don't remember. But I had friends that worked for like a Laserdisc specific magazine back in the day. And they used to get like the CAV versus the CLV. I'm getting really into the hardcore geek stuff now. But the CAV Laserdiscs were per frame versus just like blocks of images. And I got to see like Vampire Hunter D frame by frame with a really, really cool Laserdisc player. And the scene that they showed me that really blew my mind was when he walks into the hallway and it's like maggots and creatures and everything is like quivering. And I'd never seen like that part there. It can remind, what's that show? It was used to be on a Comedy Central, Dr. Katz, and it was like shaking all the time. It was like, what was it called? Dr. Katz. Anyway, the point, there used to be this show on Comedy Central where it was like a psychiatrist and the animation was like shaking all the time. It was almost like the anxiety character from Inside Out 2, right? But that hallway sequence, to this day, if I watch it, it freaks me out because I got to see it like in frame by frame and how much detail was in that one shot. And I feel that, having Vampire Hunter D on various media also exposed it to people, because the hardcore geek, cinemaphile collectors got to see it in its absolute best pristine form, and the rest of us poor schmoes had to like wait until the DVDs came out and to catch up with some real fidelity. So I think just like the adult entertainment industry was saved by VHS, I feel like unfortunately the piracy community for a while, the gray market, kept Vampire Hunter D kind of in the geek zeitgeist for a bit.
I think it did, right? Anime in general.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. For better or for worse,
Yeah, I still have, I think, a case of before you could legally get anything here in the U.S., I remember my cousins mailing us VHS cassettes.
Wow.
From Japan of different shows and movies. And it's just, I'm glad now that there is significantly better and easier legal access so that the money does go back to the creators. That's one of the things that I found sad, that for so long you couldn't buy it for the love of money. Yeah. And that's one of the things that makes me sad when a license goes away or disappears. Because if you want to support that creator, if you want to be able to buy it, if there's no opportunity, which really, to me, that's really sad. That's one of the things that I commiserate with fans about, is that, we've gotten feedback from people over the years of merch they'd like to see and things they'd like to see done with a higher quality, because, if you go looking for stuff online, you might find something that's supposedly what you're wanting, what you're looking for. And then when you get it, you're like, this is junk.
Right.
And it's really sad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want junk. Like this hoodie I'm wearing. This hoodie, this is my college dorm floor, our group. This is a hoodie from college. I've had this hoodie. It's lasted me. It's still in good condition 20 years later. It's not fallen apart. And to me, that's the kind of thing that if you're going to spend a little bit of money on something, why would you want the threadbare thing that won't survive one wash?
Right.
And unfortunately, that's, a lot of I've found gray market stuff, especially in the recent years, when what you're talking about, the era of that's what kept interest in anime alive, is that fan passion, because nobody in business seemed to ever catch on for years that, there's money to be made here and to support this industry, to make better and make more. Whereas today, it's trying to make a cheap, low-quality knockoff to make a nickel to steal that from the people who are trying to say, hey, we've got the real thing here that's good quality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's an interesting topic because, obviously, back in the day when what we're talking about, we were watching bootlegs, and I'm pretty sure the one that I originally saw was a friend who had a bootleg and showed it to me, right? So, but at that time, they weren't being sold in the U.S. You couldn't find them anywhere. They weren't. It wasn't legitimately around. And if they were, they had been a limited release, to test the waters, to see how it went. Maybe it didn't sell as well as they thought it would, again, because of that awareness. There wasn't enough awareness for people of the IP. And then there wasn't enough awareness that the item was for sale, right? So you just have these layers of a lack of awareness. So that's a big problem, right? Because then if it doesn't pop, if they don't sell well enough, then the distributor or the publisher isn't going to make more because there's a big front end investment, which is like one of the reasons when we talk about Kickstarter, which is really cool because it's basically like, okay, here's what we want to make. Ideally, you've already made it. You're not waiting 3 years, which of course I think some of us are waiting for games that were like that, right?
I do have a copy of Dark Souls on my shelf at the office. The board game.
Nice.
That one took a while.
Yeah. But what I was getting at is that it's nice. Kickstarter is nice because in many ways because it can be like a pre-sale, right? So then okay, we have this many to make, and if there's enough, then you go, okay, there's enough demand that once it gets out and people are playing it and awareness spreads, some people might end up wanting to buy their version of it and go to a game store or whatever to buy it. So they might make a deal to make, the basic version, for broader release. But at that time, animated films to put it on VHS and distribute it was really expensive. And the overhead, they weren't making a big profit margin on those items. So they needed to be a lot more careful. But now it's just the opposite. I know like with Sushi Girl, at the same time Sushi Girl came out, the company I worked for, Davis Films, we also distributed films in France through Metropolitan Film Export, which was our parent company. And so we were the executive producers of The Expendables. And so I was at San Diego Comic-Con with my boss Sammy, and Sushi Girl was coming out and Expendables was coming out. And at the same time that Expendables was released and Sushi Girl was released, we were both BitTorrented approximately the same. So Sushi Girl was 11 million per day, I mean, that was like, or something like that. Well, 1.3 million per day for 11 days. We were, I mean, if we had even gotten $1 for each of those illegal downloads, we would have been able to fund the next movie. You know, I mean, it's crazy. So, it is. I like you said, I'm very much against pirating, but also when it's available legally.
Right.
But when it's not available, sometimes us as producers, people that make things, if we can't get a distribution deal, we want things to get pirated enough so that there's an awareness and a demand for an actual distribution deal to get made. So
it's how Crunchyroll got started, actually. Right?
Now,
Crunchyroll was the biggest pirate streaming site for anime.
Yeah.
And people in Japan got upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the irony is that Crunchyroll proved the viability of that business through piracy, and they're like, well, instead of suing us, what if we license it? What if we actually make this work? We've proved it works. You're upset with us because we proved it works. Well, let's make it actually work for everyone.
Yeah.
And I look back on that and I'm like, that's the sad part of it sometimes is if we didn't have that gray market, would I have ever come across Gundam? Maybe years later.
Same.
Yep.
But if I hadn't seen that.
And Ninja Scroll.
And
oh my God.
If I hadn't seen Gundam because one of my friends had a copy of it from somewhere, as we got exposed to fan subbing on a family trip to Japan, I wouldn't have bought a bunch of Gundam model kits, which I think I actually gave you a bunch of those when I found them a couple of years ago. They got lost in a move from my parents' house. And the world's weird. I'm glad we have a chance to play in this sandbox, and I'm hoping that in playing in it, we make something awesome that people want to support and they want to be a part of a community on. Because the two VHD movies and some books were watershed inspirations for me, I think for a lot of us. And I want to keep that going. I want to make I want to see a third one get made. I want to see more of the books get published, because right now, hang on, I'm going to make sure I quote this correctly. There are 42 Vampire Hunter D titles that are across 55 books in Japanese. We're, I think, more than a dozen titles behind here in the US or in English. And I would love to see more of that backlog get caught up to.
Yeah.
And I am glad that Dark Horse has gone back, as Brandon pointed out, the omnibus. Right now there's 6 with a 7th coming out. And I'm hoping that in the midst of doing the omnibus editions, they're able to get to their backlog that got cut off by COVID, like so many other things got cut off. Like, I find it crazy that I had some fans ask about, what problems we ran into with Message from Mars. And one of the things I explained was, we spent quite a bit of time looking for a printer to be able to do the books. And we came across all kinds of paper shortages that had a knock-on effect for years. I was told that one of the factories that we were wanting to potentially use actually closed their manga, comic, book publishing division for that, the type of paper it used and the scale it needed to be. They couldn't get it, so they just closed that division out and quit printing them. Because the shortages were so bad. And to me, that's like, wow, we're going to see the ripple effect for, I think, at least another couple of years.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it comes back, I'm thrilled. By the way, up on Amazon right now for pre-order on Amazon JP is the print edition of the Rose Princess manga adaptation, which is listed for early January. So I'm hoping we'll get to see more get back on track.
And you saying all that reminds me of something that, and this is like maybe to close down the conversation regarding the gray market, is that the issue I've always had with it, and I will admit that, I wouldn't have seen Escaflowne, I wouldn't have seen Revolutionary Girl Utena, I wouldn't have seen the Dragon Ball stuff that I hate anyway, I wouldn't have seen a lot of stuff, right? But the issue with me is that the gray market became the kind of baseline excuse for continued piracy.
Yep.
It was like, oh, well, I got that, so let me keep going. And it just seemed like it just didn't stop. And the floodgates exploded. And then like in the early 2000s, anime was almost dead in the United States because everyone was watching it, but no one was paying for it. Naruto's growth in the States primarily came through the bootlegging, the illegal streams. And because it had such a robust impact internationally to kind of offset the North American thievery of it all, Naruto has been able to continue, and so has One Piece, and so forth and so on. But at the end of the day, we vote with our dollars, and that's what it really comes down to. And the awareness that Neal, that you spoke of, I still remain perplexed sometimes about the lack of awareness of certain things. So this is why I always say, the fans, we need you. We're fans, but we also need all of us together to just keep the Vampire Hunter D train rolling forward. Sort of like Snowpiercer, just going to keep going. And I feel like that's what needs to continue to happen. And we've had great conversations on our Discord. We've had great conversations, even on I had a couple people on Blue Sky talking about it. So I feel like we're making an impact, but we want more fan interaction, and the Patreon folks are, interacting. So let's keep that going.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and I know I think we'll be talking about this a bit later, but fan made, like fan films and fan projects also really help. Now, I think in modern day, like now, how to make a fan film or even now fan animation is much easier than it was before, right? True. And so, but also, like you look at like Star Trek, for example, the fan projects really helped keep the Star Trek fan property alive and well in the zeitgeist, because there might be 10 or 12 years between movies and TV shows. I know I was one of the producers of Axanar, and while one of our producers kind of went down a wrong road, and but also it was like we were saying, that we and it were the proof of concept, in a sense that we showed that you could make high quality for low cost in quick order, and stream it. And get, we made like $1.3 million on the Kickstarter for that. And so of course, a studio go, wait a minute, we can do that. Why don't we stream it? Why don't we do that? So, and we're like, well, we'd been telling you that's what we wanted to do like 3 years ago. Let's partner. But at that point, streaming wasn't really a known, most people didn't understand how do you monetize that, and it's like, it's not about monetization, it's about keeping your brand alive, and and keeping the fans, that engagement with that intellectual property, with that world setting, with those characters, so.
And you can go back as well, I guess this will be my last comment on gray market, I hope. Over the years, after I was introduced to it, when it became legal, particularly with DVDs, I bought way too many of them in some regards, I think for shelf space, because I liked it. And if you could get a better quality, less degrading, because let's face it, VHS tapes do not hold up well over time as well as a DVD does. So, yeah, I was happy to, when I came across them, hey, great, they're legitimate copies, they're good quality, let's buy them. And yeah, I love having the opportunity to support and interact. And that's one of the things that I find great joy in. When we made the announcement we were going to do this podcast and start in on making the adaptation of another book for comics, we included in that announcement a couple of extra YouTube links. And one of them was to a VHD fan short film that we thought was really cool. And, you know, it's one of those where I'm looking forward to talking with the creators about here next year, a little more detail, so all of you can hear from them as well, what their story was. But I thought it was great that they had the idea, they asked us about it, and we were like, yeah, go for it, do it, have fun, you know, and if you have any questions, ask us. So they made it, sent it to us, like, hey, here's our short film, what do you think? Well, like, that's awesome. You followed the rules, you didn't do anything crazy with it, so awesome. Sent it to Kikuchi-san, and he ended up playing at a fan gathering. He liked it, and we got to send them, you know, stuff, media from his party in Tokyo featuring their little fan project, their passion project. And to me, that's a wonderful full circle bit for, I think, what I would consider healthy fandom, because it's taking something that inspired you, that you enjoyed, adding to it, and that adds to your journey of life, that you learn something from it. You become friends with more people, you become involved, you're out in the world more. And to me, that's a very positive set of interactions. And that's something we'd love to be able to encourage more of. And whether it's, like I saw the Vampire Hunter Design charity project, it was an art project a couple months ago that the mangaka Psycho was a part of as well. And things like that, doing something for charity, doing something for your passion, that adds to life. There's enough bad in the world that, let's embrace things that inspire us, that, entertain us, that bring us together. That shared passion is a beautiful thing. Going from that, I'd love to, before we run out of time, be able to dig in and discuss Kikuchi-san's other works, because he's got a lot of them. And over the years, I've learned that while the first movie really put Vampire Hunter D on the board and pushed it out internationally, it did not carry over to a lot of his other works. And for whatever reason, Vampire Hunter D is what caught the lightning in the bottle. And it was not, Bloodlust is, in my mind, a seminal film. It's an absolutely amazing piece of cinema and art and storytelling. Just phenomenal. It was one of 4 adaptations that Kikuchi and Kawajiri teamed up on. Demon City Shinjuku, which has 7 books, was adapted through Madhouse, which Kawajiri is one of the founders of. Wicked City, 11 books in that series. Again, Madhouse and Kawajiri did an adaptation. And A Wind Named Amnesia. He's also put out a plethora of manga and other original stories. He's got, I believe, between novellas, short stories, there's 13 of those. I want to say there's 15 to 20 manga. Plus, you've got the 2 Grey Lancer books, another spin-off partnership co-write book in the D universe. His Treasure Hunter series has 18 books in it. And I know he's got a few other short stories and smaller one-off things out there as well. Plus the whole list of Vampire Hunter D short stories. I think there's another dozen of those. 20 of those? There's a bunch of them. He's had a prolific career. And a lot of them, unfortunately, have never left Japan. I believe only the first Grey Lancer book left Japan, and that was one that I believe Viz was the distributor for it, not Dark Horse. And it was only the first book. The second book did not get translated. So there's a ton there. And I'm hoping I'll get to read some of it someday. But my Japanese is utterly horrible. I've forgotten hiragana and katakana twice now. And don't even get me started on learning kanji. I'm terrible at languages. I do not have the gift my father had for languages. I struggle with English. I don't know how my dad learned a dozen languages.
Thank you for listening to Lefty Speaks, the official Vampire Hunter D podcast, hosted by Brandon Easton, Neal Fischer, and Scott McLean. This podcast is created by Unified Pictures and 9 Realms. Narration by Lauren Evallen-Muller. Recording and editing by 9 Realms. Produced by Scott McLean and Ian E. Muller. Based on the works created by Hideyuki Kikuchi. Happy hunting.